have a little, we'll jump on with me. Hello. I'm just going to wait for, see if a few people jump in, so I don't have to regurgitate or repeat what was already said. So I suppose the main thing that I wanted to speak about today is just something that I've noticed for, I don't know why, and it is, I suppose, the price you pay or the situation you find yourself in when you begin to realize that all is not what it seems, right? So people call it the waking up process. You see it in the Matrix as well, where he takes a red pill, he wakes up and finds himself in a different world altogether, right? And I think there's something that happens to people when that comes about. But I go back to 2016, and this stands out for me as pivotal in world history, not just in Irish history, but in world history. And that is the Donald Trump thing. Okay. And I talk about it a lot, and Ed, how are things? And I know that some Irish people say, why are you talking about America? It's got nothing to do with us. Of course it does. Okay. So if we all see in the West that we're all facing similar issues. Okay. You go to America, what I think the numbers are up to 20 million people now that are after walking straight across the border. That's some size of an army or some size of a number, right, to be dealing with. Even if they are all legitimate, even if they're all legitimate refugees, 20 million people coming into your country is a significant threat. But if they are soldiers, then you're in massive trouble, right? So they're facing the same issue. Ireland, same issue. England, same issue. Buddy, how are things? Most Western countries across the world, even Australia and that, like, so Western as in white people countries, we're all facing the same issues. So I think the Donald Trump thing in 2016 is significant because it turned a lot of people on, right? You all of a sudden had serious conflict between politicians and real animosity, and you got to see that on television, and it kind of jarred people because we're so used to seeing a little bit of we need to take back our country. We're in the process of doing it, Darren, and I suppose this is why Irish D, hello, what is happening in this live stream. I want to talk about the effects that smartening yourself up and realizing what's going on in your country has on people, and the reaction that can bring out in people, the jadedness that can pull out of people, right? So I'll just go back to the 2016 for a minute. The Trump thing, serious hostility, media across the world turning on this person. And what's he coming out saying? He's talking about things that are child trafficking, he's talking about illegal immigration, and he's talking about other stuff, right? He's talking about taking the power back from bureaucrats in capital cities and giving it back to the native people or the people of the country, right? Good evening, Steady Eddie. What's the story? And I suppose why I feel that's significant is because it turns so many people on politics, right? Even if it is just a knee-jerk, I hate Trump and he is horrible, right? I'll be talking politics and a little bit of psychology. So my point in that is, when you're new enough to the game, Ellie, Rave, son, hello. When you're new to the game of seeing what happens in the political landscape or the social landscape, whatever you want to call it, when you start realizing things are corrupt, you start realizing that we, the public representatives, aren't actually here representing the people of the country. Maybe they're serving other interests. Then you start hearing the World Economic Forum and all this sort of stuff, and you start thinking, look, it's all controlled. It's all from the clouds, from top up. It's all controlled in every aspect, and it's all designed to turn people against each other, and it's all designed to control everyone. Yeah, it is. But it hasn't just been like that for the last few years. Okay. And I think what happens, people, is there's a little bit of naivety and a little bit of pride involved in it. We tend to attribute the problems in the world to just coming online at the moment when we realize those problems exist. Okay, Michael, how are things? Can you clarify what it is you're talking about, please? I am talking about the moment when you realize that all is not what it seems in the world and you start to see some of the corruption. And I think for those that haven't been in it for decades, Max Beers, okay, I'll have a look. When for those who haven't been involved in this stuff or interested in this stuff for decades, I'll try and stay away from the comics now so I can keep myself on track, because otherwise I end up God knows where. You can become a little bit jaded because you can begin to see the enormity of the task that we're facing. But the weak spot of that is we begin to believe that these problems only came about when we noticed them, when in reality these same issues have been going on for decades and decades and centuries and probably millennia. Okay, history is replete with these organizations, these monarchies, these Roman churches and all that stuff, and it's all about nation building and nation domination. Okay, not the nation of domination, but the domination of nations. So I think where the pride comes into it is you give yourself a gold star for recognizing that the Illuminati, yeah, legitimate organization, historically validated organization. Okay, so nothing mad there. So when you come online yourself and you begin to recognize things, you give yourself a bit of kudos for seeing things as they are. And we can end up looking down creation of nations, yeah, and the destruction of them too, yeah, the controlling of nations. We begin to get frustrated with those who aren't seeing things how we're seeing them, right? And we begin to think that they're stupid and they're sheep and all that lovely stuff. And why aren't you seeing this? Because I've seen this. But we never ask ourselves, why is it I'm only seeing it now? Instead of that, we tend to cut it off and say, like the birth of Christ stuff. So it goes from BC to 0 and then 180. So there's nearly a zero start date or a year zero as to when you snapped out of it and forward. But we tend to ignore or forget what has come before because we tend not to research what went before, because that's a blind spot for people. And what can happen, people, is they get incredibly jaded. They get feelings of incredible helplessness and hopelessness as well, right? But there's a cycle that you can go through, and you do go through that. So like nearly the stages of grief or whatever, where you realize all is lost, and then a year later of saying all is lost and we're going to be gone now soon, you realize you're still here. So then you need to reevaluate things, and you go, okay, so we're seeing these massive issues, and it looks like impending doom, but it hasn't come yet. Even though I thought it was going to be here a lot sooner than it was, right? And it can be flattening. It can destroy relationships, because when you jump onto this stuff, you just want to, from the best place in the world and the best hearts in the world, you want to wake people up. You want to share this invigorating information, the truth, with people as you see it, right? You want to share this with people in the hope that they'll see it and they'll get on side with you, and you can talk about it and you can make plans and you can organize and you can get other people involved and all that stuff. And it's great, it's lovely stuff. But when that doesn't happen and conversations are met with, all right, you can become disillusioned with it. And you can begin to think that I've tried my best in sharing all of this stuff with people and they have no interest in it. And their ignorance and their stupidity is going to drag me into an early grave, right? But I want people to zone in on this and hold this and take this as a given, because it's true. In the last 4 years, in the last year, The amount of people that are after getting very conversant with things that are of serious importance is gone through the roof. And if you take that year and you go back 3 or 4 years, the numbers are after exploding. Like, I remember being on Twitter. I don't know how long ago I went onto it, but I just ended up going off it because I seen it as a waste of time. Like, you throw out a couple of comments or you comment on a newspaper thing or whatever, and you just get bombarded. Most of them might have been nonsense accounts, but a lot of them probably weren't, like, because it's the natural reaction of people is to just shout down the person that's bringing new information because we don't want to take the time to evaluate it or reflect on it in any way, right? But the point of it is, I started looking into this stuff in about 18 years ago, but nearly 20 years ago, right? And there was not a sinner to be found who wanted to talk about anything that might be uh, socially not acceptable, right? That's mad Illuminati stuff. The word was used there. Crazy stuff, big conspiracy theory stuff. 99% of stuff that would have been spoken about over the last 18 years for myself, all common sense now. It's all common sense now. It's all well accepted, socially accepted stuff. You know, obviously you get the lunatics on one side or whatever that have no time for it, but most of it is common knowledge now. You know, and people then claim, "Oh, sure, I always knew that. I always knew," but they didn't. They only know it now because people stood out and put their neck on the line to speak about certain things and put serious effort and attention and intention into what they were doing. Okay, to try and share a few things with people to make their life a little bit easier, to give them a better view of what's coming down the line and now what is here, right? So I suppose this is just a little bit of a message of context. You might have only come to this stuff in the last year, and because you're only relatively new to it, you assume, or you might assume, that the numbers that are interested in this stuff have always been the same numbers of people that were interested in this stuff, when that is not the case. Okay, it's really, really not the case. You can't throw a stone anywhere now without hitting someone that's switched onto this stuff and that recognizes it. They might not speak about it openly, but get into a conversation and you peel back the social niceties of Irish people for a few minutes and they're in total agreement with you. No, they might just be putting on the social persona and agreeing for the sake of politeness, but a lot of people aren't. Like, a lot of people know and understand this stuff. That wasn't the case 3 or 4 years ago. It really wasn't. So for those who are losing a little bit of hope and thinking, look, we haven't got everyone woken up, you're never going to. You're never going to. But we've significant numbers now. Significant. So the Red Sea poll, sorry, from the other day said that 20% of, I think the polling number is about 3 to 4,000. So 20% of them Irish people believed that this government was using immigrants to replace Irish people in Ireland. That's 2 in every 10 people. That's a massive number of people. And 75% of the people polled believed that we needed far more strict or far stricter immigration laws. They're massive numbers, massive numbers. And I have a video coming as well. Wales flags, lovely. How is Wales? How is Wales doing? I've heard some horrible things about Wales, not the people or the country, but what's happening over there. And so Wales seems to never get any airtime for any reason about anything in Ireland. So, piano player, please let me know how Wales is doing. And on Wales, I would move then to Northern Ireland or the north of Ireland. And we've seen over the last few days that, before I get into that, actually, I'll go on with what I wanted to start out with, which is the far right thing, right? So the word, or the label far right, was flung at people for years now, few years, but it's really concentrated in the last year, right? And you ask people for a definition, they don't really have one. They throw out, sure, they hate foreigners, don't they? Grand. But ultimately, when you start talking to people who would be considered far right, ultimately the core value or the core issue that they have is self-determination in their own country. They don't want to have things continually forced on them that they don't want by governments that they don't want in a country that they don't want to change, right? So I understand then that some people will try and take the power out of the smear and say, yeah, I'll happily wear the far right label. But the perspectives and the beliefs that are involved in being labeled far right, whatever in whatever legitimacy that has, are pretty common and basic, and 20 years ago would have been the average perspective on things. Go back 30, 40 years ago, it would have been absolutely in the Marrow worldview. You know, this is our country. I was born in this country. So are all the people that came along behind me, my family, and I would like to continue to make good decisions in my country and not have it changed irreparably or to an unrecognizable degree. That's common sense, right? So if we do say I'll take the far right thing and I'll wear it and I don't care, it has no power over me, fine. But it does to the RTE watchers, right? No disrespect, but come on, the reality, it does have an effect on them. Okay, so should we really be accepting the enemy's labels of ourselves? In some ways, I understand the motivation in doing it because you're trying to take the power out of it by going, see, I don't care if you call me that, I call myself that, doesn't bother me at all. But that stuff still has a magic spell, a magic possession over other people, right? When the views that they're trying to capture in the label are not that radical. They're not radical at all. They're pretty biologically standard. You know, the self-preservation of your own organism and of the associated and related organisms around you and the territory in which you live. This is the animal kingdom, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you see. And then I move on to Jamie. How are things? I'm good. Far right, not far wrong. Yeah, and it ultimately is. It's about that. You know, which worldview leads to the most desirable outcomes for a people across all spectrums of human endeavors and behaviors. Okay, pragmatism. What works best for a people? I suppose what works best for a people is to let the people be what they are naturally. Okay, but that's not what we're up against here. We're up against the opposite of that. So, and again, as I started with, it's not just us that's up against that. It's Western people across the world and West predominantly, naturally. But we will go then to Belfast, and in Belfast we seen people with the tricolour standing alongside loyalists, unionists, and people with the Union Jack. And naturally, that's going to stir conversation. It's going to stir up ancient hostilities as well. It's going to stir up the emotional layer, the real solid emotional, fundamental stuff in the Irish mind collectively, right? And you're going to see all sorts of reactions. And I suppose what's important to that in that is let those reactions come up and then try and sieve out which ones are actually your own and which are just echoes of history coming out through you, reverberating out across society now. Because the cat is out of the bag a little bit. This question needs to be entertained seriously and spoken about seriously. Name calling, hatred, hostility, and real intense emotions, they're unavoidable, they're inevitable, but they should not be the basis on which we make our next decisions on these things, right? So, regardless of what your view on it is, I would suggest that as we do have a common enemy to be aimed at in terms of tyrannical governments and the effects of tyrannical governments, which are the immigration stuff, legal and illegal, right? The pumping in of foreign people into this country. That's an issue. Governments in the north, governments in England, governments in America, governments in Ireland are absolutely squeezing the life and the soul out of the people of the land. So would we not be best to not exaggerate or resuscitate hostilities with people who are fighting against a similar enemy than we are? Should we not take any sort of aid or any sort of assistance that we can? I'm not saying we need to put on our 3 lines on our shirt and put the Union Jack on our back. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm not even saying you need to accept or like any of these people. You're not swearing allegiance to any English monarchy or their German monarchs, whatever the case is. Right? You're not doing any of that. But if you have a people in close proximity to you who can do a bit of damage to the enemy who is destroying your potential future and potentially erasing you from the future and your people, should we not be happy with that and take the goodness out of that while it comes? Okay. And also, obviously, as soon as things start looking a little bit wayward, back off, back off. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with you so long as your aim is similar to mine. And as soon as your aim swerves and looks like it might be impacting me or my people in a negative way, then you're gone. And any shoulder to shoulder stuff is gone up until the point if there is another one where we're aimed at the same enemy. And I suppose in Ireland especially, we love the English. Any conflict between us has been manufactured in order to undermine our united strength. You can't argue with that. Can't argue with that. And we can stay locked into the past and doomed to repeat this cycle, which is a 50-year cycle in Ireland. Every 50 years there's a blowout. The last one was in the 70s. So we're getting there. Getting there. And prior to that, then you had the 1916 to the early 20s, or Civil War and the Rising, right? So we're getting to that point again. And what I'm saying then is you're going to see a re-emergence of all these age-old conflicts and hostilities, perfectly legitimate, and they need to be worked through and worked with. And I think it would be very, very easy to turn north and south against each other again, or the people. You understand what I'm saying when I say that. I'm using it for simplicity's sake. I'm not going to get into the nuance of it, but you get what I'm saying, right? So it'd be very easy to turn that against each other. And to be honest, I think we would slide so easily back into that it would just destroy any chance we have of any sort of future in this country or in this world. Say for the people who have left Ireland that might come back and reclaim it again, but they hate us all the same. Yeah, grand. So my point on that is parking the historical stuff for a few minutes and prioritizing the present and the future stuff. I think that needs to be done. I think it needs to be done. And I think you need level-headed people who are not afraid to speak that it's okay to park this stuff for a while. It doesn't mean you're going up cutting fingers and becoming blood brothers with any of these people. It just means you're going to use the momentum they might have against an enemy that you share, and they'll do the same thing. Okay, up until the point where it's not beneficial. And if it stays beneficial, brilliant. If it doesn't, good luck again. It's as simple as that. Use it while you can, because we need all the help we can get. We had protests across the country, and Clonmel was one of them. Clonmel is a big, big, big town, one of the bigger inland towns in Ireland, right? Thank you, primary school, but for that knowledge. But the turnout for the protests was crazy, crazy poor, right? So you had people who wouldn't come out. You had people who refused to come out. They'd murmur a little bit of support here and there, they'd drop up food and all that stuff, but that's not what you need, really. It's not the primary thing you need. You need bodies. You need to create an image that there's a significant show of force here. And we didn't have that in Clonmel. That might change as soon as they start dumping these boys into the fields and in the modular homes, but up until then, the support's been pretty bad. The numbers have been pretty low, like, you know, and I just think it'd be a little bit naive to reject off the cuff assistance in some way. It doesn't have to be direct assistance, but it's just a recognition even that there's people there on this same island that are fighting the same enemy we are. Now, does that mean we go up and wash their feet and we make them sandwiches and stuff? No, it doesn't. Because we also need to be aware that, like, this is an age-old game. And whipping up, there's the whip, WH, you know, whipped cream. Whipping up a storm between both sides has been done to death. It's been done for centuries, and it's worked. It's worked a treat. It's worked an absolute treat. So they'll do it again, right? Drew Harris, descendant of Frank Kitson. Look, Frank Kitson up in the north. He took his guerrilla warfare kind of stuff, or the insurgency stuff that he learned in Africa to destroy any rebellion in African countries, and he came back and he applied that to the north of Ireland. Okay, he engaged with killing and murdering civilians to sow dissension between regular people in the north. That's what he done. He was English military. That's what he done. Okay, that's what he done with the backing of the Catholic Church as well. All that stuff. Okay, so we've been played like morons for centuries, and a lot of people understood it, but a lot of people didn't. Again, because just as you people that have no interest in this stuff now, that's not new. That's not new. You've always had people like that, and you always will. You're never going to get 100% of the people on side. Like, you just won't. People are terrified of this stuff. Why don't you teach and speak your unique language? Yeah. Thank you, Michael Devine, for reminding me of the shame that I carry for that, because I'm not fluent in the mother tongue yet. But I have a few words and I understand a lot more than I can speak. But I think that is an issue, because the way you speak influences the way you think. Okay, and there's a significant differences between the English and Irish language that I'm not going to get into here, but it's interesting stuff, and it is something that should be brought back and should be spoken of in schools, not just a case of writing it down. I mean, all Ireland don't speak Irish. Yeah, no, the majority of people wouldn't speak Irish, and they wouldn't have a word of it either, really. Have a few words. Can they go to the bathroom? That's great, yeah, that's about it. So yeah, I suppose, look, that's my point. Keep talking and then come back wholeheartedly. It's not gone, you know, it's not gone. It's still there, and I think this stuff it's going to bring that back up, which is a positive. So to circle back then again, you're taking these issues as unique among those I've heard, while most make sociological analysis, which is good. You examine social phenomena through the lens of individual psychology. Sorry, what's your name? Del. Thank you, Del. Yeah, look, that's what I try and do, because that's what I'm interested in. And I think, look, what I will accept that we are moving en masse when we begin to see people use the interest that they have for the benefit of people and start sharing out stuff and talking about stuff that they're passionate about and that they're interested in. It doesn't have to be political stuff. I would rather spend my life talking about things that I'm really, really interested in rather than the political stuff. It just so happens that the priority right at the moment is the political stuff, because it's people's lives are on the line here, right? They genuinely are, like, and I think that we should take all the help that we can get. And so my point, I'll finish on this, is the numbers for the protests have been low. They've been growing, but they've been low, right? And I think they will continue to be low up until the point where people really feel that lives of themselves or their family are at risk. And then the numbers will increase. But by then, you kind of have chaos. So you have a few, I suppose, the tip of the spear people who are trying to get ahead of that and go, look, lads, if you get onto this stuff now, you can avoid the nonsense, that the chaos is going to come down the line. But we might need to see, Jamie, thank you very much. We might need to see that chaos in order for people to keep people's instincts to kick in again, because all the propaganda, all that stuff, It's designed to shame and the emotional abuse. All that stuff is designed to disconnect you or make you betray your instincts, you know. So we all have an instinct for self-preservation, but when you're told that to move in accordance with that instinct makes you a morally reprehensible person, people deny that they have that instinct and go, no, 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 I don't think like that at all. Yes, you do. Of course you do. You're a human creature. You're a human being, and you have an instinct for self-preservation, which will kick on. And I think what you're seeing, I just watched a few little videos on Twitter there, or X, whatever, of some countries in Europe that are up in flames. I think England or whatever kicking off there is going, and you're starting to see it in Ireland, North and South in Ireland, and you can cheer that along. You can take the encouragement out of it. You can see the benefit and the positives of it because people are getting animated and people are getting angry and people are acting. Okay. I would just be concerned with the level of understanding that people have as to how serious this is. That it's not a case of we'll go in and we'll pull these immigrants out of the building and we give them a hiding or whatever, or we'll move them on out of our town and then that's the problem done. The issue is a lot bigger than that. It's a lot bigger than that. Because again, if we swerve and we put ourselves in the position and hopefully try and put ourselves in the mindset of the politicians in power now, would you be happier with people going in attacking immigrants, or would you be happier with people coming in through the gates of the Dáil to perform citizens' arrests on you? Which is you'd be more happy with? You'd be much more happy if you have ethnic conflict, and you would be pouring your whole load and lot into trying to stir that up. Of course you would. Okay, so while, but that's also not to deny the impact that these immigrants have and will have on these communities. I'm not saying that you ignore one and do the other. You see that a lot, like it's a black and white fallacy. It's either this or that. It can't be both. Both, both the politicians in power, the decisions they're making, and the effects of those decisions are just as real as each other because they're the same thing really. They're just different shades of the same black, right? No pun intended, of course, but they both affect Irish people, and we need to combat both of them. We need to deal and address with both of these issues, but we need to fully understand what it is we're dealing with and what it is that is attacking us. And largely that is the political system or the people in that system. Again, how far that goes back. A lot of these people are parts of families that have been in those positions, landlords, decision making positions in Ireland for centuries. Okay. So the idea of converting these people back to the plebs of Ireland and allowing them to take on the dirty pagan or the dirty heathen perspective, that's a no-go. That's not going to happen. Like these people need to be removed in as legitimate a way as possible because I think that's the best way of solidifying people's support around this stuff is if you go about things the right way. Have we gone about things the right way? Yeah. There's been injunctions that have been gotten for these sites that have been handed in. They've the site or the site owner or the project manager, whatever, they have 7 days to get back and address the concerns that have been brought up in these affidavits and stuff for the injunctions. And if not, then they will be considered to be held in contempt of court and the whole thing could be shut down, at least in terms of whatever towns these injunctions have been gotten in. And again, you're going to have different shades of shite, I mean, absolutely. You're going to have people that the knee-jerk response, and it's part of the helplessness and the nihilistic kind of, so what's the point in doing that? And it's all controlled and corrupt anyway, and you're never going to be able to change that. It's been changing for the last few years, massively. It's exploded over the last few years. Like I've 105 people watching this now. That's not happening last year. That's definitely not happening 5 years ago. But now it is for loads of people, and that's great. But yeah, so you'll have people's knee jerk would be, no, what's the point in ringing the guards and asking them to abide by their oath, and what's the point in contacting your local councillors and your local TDs, or what's the point in trying to go through the court systems? It's all corrupt. You know. So what's that suggesting then? Just give in. Just give in, because there's still a game of optics to play. That's the main game. Is to try and dictate how people see things, how they interpret what's going on. You don't have to control what's going on, really. You just have to be able to control how people are interpreting what they're seeing, okay, or what they're hearing. So if things ratchet up, and you see in Ireland people are a little bit annoyed, frustrated with the lack of people doing the job they should be doing. It's not a lack of communication or a lack of resources or services in an area. Government officials are supposed to be implementing changes or not according to the will of the people that they represent. They're public servants. They've tried on the master's coat and the crown, and they've decided, I kind of like this. I'm not taking this off. Not only am I not taking it off, I'm going to make the decisions I want to make, because I'm here now. Come get me. What are you going to do about it? Right? So that's what you're dealing with. But if people get violent, if Ireland begins to mirror some of the aggression and violence, or whatever you want to call it, or burning things that you're seeing in other places, the average person will look at that and say, I want no part in that. And then you might come back and say, but we were given no choice. And then they might say, did you try ringing your local councillor? And if you haven't, you have to tell the truth and say, I didn't. And they'll say, see, of course, if you'd done that, they would have heard what you had to say, and they would have made decisions based on what you had to say. But you didn't do that. You went straight to criminality. You deserve it now. This is the way people are. You need to accept that. This is the way a lot of people are. We need to accept that, and we need to play the game. And the game is exhaust all official avenues. Guards have been spoken to. Health and safety regulators have been spoken to. The security and the workers on the sites have been spoken to. Local councillors have been spoken to whenever they'll talk to you. They've been invited to meetings. They've not even responded. They've said no. If they've said anything at all, they've no interest in it. TDs have not replied. And what was that? Court systems. Media, sure. They sell what sells. They sell where their funding comes from, which is the government. So there's a serious conflict of interest there. The RTE aren't going to come out and start hammering the government too hard, because that's where the funding comes from. There's a reason the government are freeing up $750 million of your money in the next year for RTE, to keep them on side. It's as simple as that. So you're kind of at nothing with you're at nothing in the hope of turning these people onto your side, but you are at something in terms of sending in emails and being able to show people, look, I've tried to communicate with these people 10, 15 times and I've gotten nothing off them. How can you still hold faith in these people? You told me try and communicate with these people. I've got nothing. Now what have you got to say? The system that you have so much faith in is not working according to how it says it should work, and does work. So now what do I do? People are left with no choice, right? So there's a game unfolding here. There's a game being played all the time. And I suppose, in a way, it's best to try and carry yourself in that way, knowing full well that those who say the enemy, the eye of Sauron or whatever, right? The enemy, the big bad evil thing. It wants to trip you up. It wants you to make mistakes, and it wants you to dirty and sully your name in a way that they can show to everyone. Don't give it to them. Understand the enemy. Understand what works and what benefits them in terms of how you carry yourself and the things you say and do. Understand that and refuse to give them that power. Okay? Don't fall into the snares and the traps that they set for you. Just don't. Try try and pretend, even if you don't believe it, try and pretend that the system is legitimate. Treat it as such. Try and enter into interactions and conversations with these organizations or entities and record the correspondence or lack of it. And that's something you can give to people. People can't refute that. Whereas if you're just telling people, look, the whole government wants you dead and by 2050 there's going to be no Irish, that freaks the life out of people. That freaks the life out of people. And they go, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't want that to do with that. You're out of your mind. But if you show them, look, I've tried to contact local councillors, I've tried to get on and talk on radio, you can listen to it, listen to how they turn. I went on to try one point and they start talking about 5 other things that have got nothing to do with it to try and make me look bad. So you listen to that, see what they're doing there. That's weird, isn't it? Why would you do that if you're impartial? This is stuff that people can listen to and they can go, okay, yeah, maybe I see what you're saying. And you're always going to get people that side with the state all day long because that's the only sense of power that they have in life is by identifying with the abuser, like the Stockholm syndrome stuff. So it might not apply to you, but understand that it applies to a lot of people. And we need to be able to develop a way of navigating those waters and navigating the crowds of people, right? So I have a video on the Belfast thing. I would say it's probably finished doing the rendering or whatever it's doing or uploading. So I'm going to get off now and I am going to upload that. So thank you all for listening. I will jump back on tomorrow evening, I'd say, because or maybe Wednesday evening. I'll do Wednesday evening because I have something I've been throwing together just on the history of Ireland and the Catholic Church and England, funnily enough or not. There's a few points in that, and it's from a great book. Everyone go get this book if you're interested. It is, it's backwards now. So Ireland and the Pope, a brief history of papal intrigues against Irish liberty from Adrian IV to Leo XIII by James Maguire. And it's written in, doesn't say the year, but early 1900s, right? So it's great stuff. And I'll be picking a lot out of that. And I'll be adding in a few other things that are relevant. So have a good evening and stay positive, right? Because the numbers are growing. People are getting switched on, and I see lovely, lovely things in the future if we just reach out and grab it, right? But we will have to go through some dark things to earn that. You don't just get a lovely future, okay? We've never had. So we have to take that. So have a lovely evening, and I will see you all on Wednesday. So thank you.